We talk all about actually health insurance this time and things that you can do to both improve your user experience and your spend. I am in a new space today, Pouch 6 Productions in Austin. If you're in Austin, check them out. And I am talking today to James Welsh and Thomas Wagner from Medxoom, and we are going to talk about how technology can save your budget, improve your user experience, and keep you out of the Department of Labor eyesight at the same time. Thank you so much, you two, for joining me today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So we share a love of a common quote. If you want to pay less for healthcare, you got to pay less for healthcare, from our friend Dutch Rojas.
Who doesn't love Dutch?
Well, who doesn't? But tell me a little bit about how Medxoom helps us pay less for healthcare.
Sure. It's, I've used that quote many times, after learning it from Dutch. And it's a great quote because when you think about the discovering of prices for different procedures or CPT codes in healthcare, the entire system has been built against the consumer.
Yep. And
when you can actually bring to light that there are actual costs for procedures and there are different costs for procedures, it puts the power back into the consumer's hands and to the healthcare plan's hands as well.
Do you see people get a little freaked out at the variance of cost?
Yes and no, and I say no because I'd say the vast majority of people still don't know.
Yep. I get some pretty irate people. What do you mean it costs this and we can get it for this? I'm like, well.
I think the best analogy I ever heard about it is, and this relates, I believe, to pretty much everyone. You need to put gas in your car. You go to a gas station. You put your credit card in. You put the gas in, and when you're done filling up, you get a bill that and then you see that you paid $10 a gallon. Yet the store or the gas station next door, it was $2.50 a gallon. Mm-hmm. I think that is like the most perfect analogy as to how healthcare prices for the exact same procedures are different from one building to the next within the same. Exactly. Even within the same building. Very true.
So you've been around for some time, and your model is mostly comes from the payment side. But I think you've grown quite a lot lately. How much more growth how many more employers are coming to you and saying, we have a problem and we'd like to fix it now? Because I think employers have had a problem for a long time, but many more seem willing to fix it.
I think you're seeing it a lot more now. Medxoom as a business has actually looked more at the enterprise level, and that's not in terms of size of client, but it's actually how we go about obtaining our clients. And we've worked really with the health plans and the third-party administrators to get those employer groups onto the platform. We don't go direct to employer, but we do see third-party administrators bringing on hundreds, if not thousands, of groups at a given time because the overall platform and the capabilities, it just resonates across their entire book of business now.
So to me, you are the missing connection piece between alternate payment methods and employers, because there have been a couple of points that have made it very challenging for an employer to do those things, even if they want to.
It's a really great way to say it. The way I look at our business is we work with a lot of really smart organizations and a lot of really smart brokers and health plan administrators. And what I've found and what I've learned, because I come from outside of the healthcare space, is that these people have amazing ideas as to how to solve the challenges that the everyday American and the employers are dealing with, but they've never had the tools. Mm-hmm. One thing that our platform brings is it gives them additional technology tools to now execute on the ideas that they've had for years on end. And that's what's been so rewarding to see some of the success stories, not from our standpoint, but from our client standpoint. Good. I was just up with one of our clients in Wisconsin, and two of his employer groups were just nominated to receive national awards where both CEOs are going to be honored on Capitol Hill. I believe it's next week. And it's because of how they've shifted their entire health paradigm and really brought more affordability back to their employers. And I'm not going to say that we are the reason that is, but we're a component of it, and it's pretty neat to see.
In my experience, we've been really fortunate to work with some really interesting clients, and they don't lack for ideas. They lack for how to. And I think you solved that. And Thomas, I think you agree with that. You were in the advisor space for some time before moving on to Medxoom.
Yes, ma'am. It comes down to employee engagement. And if you have 5, 6, 7 different platforms that you're using for that to be able to utilize and lower cost, you're going to confuse people, right? And if you confuse members, they're not going to want to do it. If it's already difficult to understand, healthcare is already difficult to understand, and you're going to add all these different platforms in, which in theory lowers costs, but it's now more confusing. Everyone's just going to throw their hands up and be like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to do what I'm used to doing.
Yes.
What I've always done in the past. And so you have to be able to integrate everything together to be able to deliver something that's keep it simple, stupid, right? That KISS type of model, and be able to have people utilize it.
You do something that I just think is the bee's knees, since we're live. Single-use credit cards that aren't actually credit cards. Let's talk about those for a few minutes.
More than happy to. And I've used them myself personally.
Yep.
So it's there's some fun stories to talk about. So when you think about, again, the cost of healthcare, traditionally, most people, when they walk into a facility or doctor's office, they hand over the plastic ID card for their insurance carrier. There are certain costs associated with handing that card over. Network rates, pre-negotiated rates for different codes and procedures. When you can actually just simplify a healthcare transaction of a member walking in to a doctor's office saying, this is what I need, or it's pre-scheduled, and that facility informs you ahead of time what the price is, you can simply just have a closed loop transaction where you're a member walking into an office and paying for a service and walking out, and that's it. There's no claim, there's no administration. The member wins, the plan wins, and the facility usually wins, even though they're almost, and what our data shows it, almost 100% of the time accepting less money for the cost of that care. They don't have any administrative work on their end to go capture member responsibility, to go pay their revenue cycle management company, to go process the claim. It's just much easier. So yeah, we've created a technology where plans have the ability to load plan dollars onto virtual single-use credit cards that members can use at the time of service. And like I said, I've used a couple of them for myself and for family members.
So in my mind, that solves two problems. So the first is, it is really not that difficult to negotiate a cash price with most providers. I know that is really an alien concept to most people, employers, employees, patients, almost all people that don't do what we do. That is an alien concept, but it's really not that hard. Hi, I'm here to have this. How much does it cost? I don't have insurance. And after you get over the two-headed look, it's like, oh, well, it costs this. And it is almost always less expensive than a PPO discount. And that is also very, very surprising to people. But the challenge there has been arranging payment at the time of service. So we've solved that problem. The other problem that often happens that you may or may not see, but you have solved, is that there are other companies that will help you do that, but the employer also has to pay for the service before the member enters the building. And that has proven challenging. And I know that because sometimes services are not, the final price is not done until the day before the surgery. It's really hard, even for a willing employer, you have to get somebody, they have to transfer the money, it has to go to the facility. With the single-use credit card, virtual credit card, literally the person comes in with their app. Yes, you have to use an app. Here's the credit card. The person behind the desk types it in, just like any other credit card, and the service is paid for. You work it out with the TPA, who works it out with the employer. There are some technicalities there, and the gist, you're fronting some money, you get paid pretty quickly. The provider gets paid the same day. They don't have any revenue cycle problem, and revenue cycle is probably the biggest problem that facilities have. So they'll take a cash price. money in hand is really a powerful thing.
It really is. And you made it sound simple. It almost is actually that simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be difficult for the member, for the plan, or for the plan administrator to be involved in that transaction. And even in what we found is that these are highly utilized in known, scheduled, upcoming procedures.
Right.
They haven't been used often in, say, emergency type situations, or you're standing in the office right now at the time of service and they can't see you. They haven't been used much, but they have been used and they've been successful.
Yes.
And so if a member is having an access to care issue and they can't get past, the glass window to actually see the doctor, we have been successful in working with our clients to get cards created in as little about 7 to 12 minutes to get that facility paid, to get that member seen.
So I am not surprised to hear that, and not surprised to hear that that is possible. You do need a relatively well-educated member in order for that to happen. Let's talk a little bit about how members are educated. And you have some very positive and some little bit tougher solutions for that.
So here's the cool thing. Remember when I said that I've learned and worked with some really, really smart people and we've been able to help them work on their ideas?
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. So in the situations where a member is, having trouble gaining access and they need to get seen quickly, they've been educated by the broker, by the administrator ahead of time. In case this happens, do this. So they know exactly what to do. And here's the other part. All of the member support help is directly in the application as well. So whether it be a concierge, an advocate, member support, whatever terminology our clients want to use, the members know if I run into an issue, press this button, and it's going to get me connected to the person my plan wants me to speak with to solve my issue right now.
If you're an employer listening to this, I think it's really important that you hear the it takes a village part. So this is a little bit of a different workflow. Really, it's less work over time. Health plans have their own challenges. This work is a little bit different, but happens less frequently, and with a little bit of support is a diminishing issue. You might see it a few times in the beginning of when you've made changes, but as time goes on, people know what to do. They understand what to do. I also think having one app rather than 8 or 9, and everybody has an app. The network has an app, the TPA has an app, the carrier has an app, the mental health provider has an app, the PBM has an app. You can eliminate all of that. You can wrap it into one ecosystem. And I am a huge believer in 24-hour advocacy. And I know that often is a very unpopular opinion. It does cost a little bit, but the return on it is remarkable. And it gets that work out of your office. So if your message as the employer is, just call this person, they'll take care of you, it doesn't matter what time it is, and your leadership team is saying the same thing and using the same tools, and your advisor is saying the same thing, what you can do is remarkable. I mean, I've seen 0 out-of-pocket health plans come out of this kind of arrangement. We do it often, where the member has no responsibility at all. They do have to engage a little bit differently in the system, but they like it once they do it. No more ID card. They can go where they want to go. Doesn't cost them anything. It can be remarkable.
It has been. And what we've seen across our book of business is the clients that are utilizing unique payment alternatives or methods almost always are waiving any member responsibility.
Yes.
So,
Incredible.
Mr. and Mrs. Member, if you use this card and we've negotiated what this price could be, it costs you 0.
And there are enough tools now where you don't necessarily have to call somebody. You can build that into your plan. People are having a love-hate relationship with the CAA. I think it's fantastic. Execution is a little challenging, but I think that the rule is fantastic. I mean, as an employer, do you buy anything else that you don't know what it costs before you pay for it?
Me, never.
I don't either. Do you?
Nope. You go to the grocery store, look at the milk, look at the eggs.
Exactly. Before you put it in your cart, and most people have no way of doing that now.
The CAA it has the potential to change the overall landscape of healthcare as we know it for the country.
Yes.
It does bring consumerism to the forefront, but there are a couple challenges that I've already seen. The machine readable files, and yeah, we can both laugh at it.
The Matrix.
Yeah, the
Yes,
matrix
the
of
matrix.
it. I think what you're seeing is the execution of plans publishing the machine readable files on a website where a member would have to, one, know it's there, two, be able to read a JSON file. Good luck. I mean, it's impossible.
I can't.
And three, find any tangible data of it. It's impossible. So the intent of being able to do that, it lands flat. Where Medxoom and other organizations, are using the data now readily available to make positive outcomes with these machine readable files for members is really neat to see. It gives you the ability, if I'm a member, I can search for a provider, and if it's one of the 500 shoppable CPT codes, same directly in the application, I can see what the cost is. I can see what the plan would pay for this procedure. I can see what my responsibility would be. I can see what my remaining deductible and out-of-pocket max would be as well. And it's as simple as typing in, I need a knee procedure. Like just typing in KNE, it's going to autofill and going to show you all the different codes that could be associated with it. Now, as a member, you're probably not going to be educated on exactly what it is. But if you can then make a phone call or two and talk to support and saying, hey, listen, this is what my ortho is telling me I need. Can you point me in the right direction? Not only is your member support can have access to the same tool that you as a member have, but they're probably going to be able to decipher this is the CPT that you're going to have.
Right.
And now you can see exactly what the cost is going to be before you actually have it done.
And that's 500 services this year. Next year it will be all services.
I think it's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I shouldn't say exactly. I think I said exactly last time. It's whatever that machine readable file says.
Which can change on a regular basis.
Exactly. There's my little disclaimer.
Yeah. Those pricing changes, pricing is a little bit dynamic. And I would imagine right now pricing is a little bit more dynamic than it's been in some time. People are settling themselves with the supply chain issues and all the other costs that are changing. So, what are some of your best practices for engagement? So we've talked about advocacy. What about taking away somebody's physical ID card?
What we found, and I think if you look back to January at the top of this year, which is traditionally the highest renewal period for any plan, a large portion of our clients actually did eliminate the plastic ID cards to get all the members to utilize, or not even utilize because they're using it, but to get everyone to download the application, because their benefits wallet or their digital ID card is now housed in there along with their plan documentation and all of the integrations, like you said earlier. You have an app for this, an app for that.
Yep.
Well, now all of those different, unique components of your health plan are now located in one single spot.
Let's go back to the CAA. So once we get past the machine readable file issue, which, machine readable files, they're not really meant for you or I to read them. They're meant for TPAs to read them and
And a machine.
And a machine. Last I checked, we were human. So they're not really meant for us to read them. But when you give people that tool, they can literally find their surgeon. And then you can bundle the pricing from there with whatever service the employer is using, because that is not your domain, but it is your domain to let that live in your application. How much do people like that?
Thomas has used the application not only by himself, but also for groups that he represented as well. I'd love to hear your take on it.
No, they love it. You get the capability to be able to search for different medical procedures, and you get to see that, hey, this hospital A, just using your gas station scenario earlier, could be right across the street from hospital B, and they can have two varying different procedures, right? And this hospital at Hospital A, we're not going to pick on anyone, it could be $3,000 for a particular MRI. And Hospital B across the street that has an outpatient surgical center can be $1,500 for an MRI. Right? And if you incentivize those members to go to those places, go into your scenario earlier where you can actually build a plan design to incentivize members to go there, we can create a little widget inside the platform that says, call now, this may be free, right? Or $0 copay. And so they're able to click on that. And who wouldn't? I mean, I would rather pay $0 than $3,000 for a procedure.
I would as well. Some people would not, apparently. So what do you see next? Where are your biggest growth opportunities? I know some of them, and I'm looking forward to them.
I think when you look towards the future, I think that what's most commonly asked is how do we see quality coming into play now, the quality scores. And I think you've had some really good companies that have made some strides in the past.
Yep.
But I think we're seeing the next iteration of how do we actually take quality components, not only just, the 5 CMS, publicly known ratings, but how do you then take readmission rates? How do you then take, all the different data points that are now out there? There's some companies doing some pretty cool stuff. How do you take that? How do you layer it into the machine readable files with cost, and then paint a picture as to this is the highest quality, most cost efficient facilities you can go to? And I think that to me is probably at the top of the priority list as to where I see healthcare going.
We use advocacy quite a lot, and we use some of those, or our advocates use some of those data sources, and they don't look at price at all. They only look at quality, the quality of the provider or the quality of the facility. And they have steered both. The conversation has been both, you know what, you've got a really high quality provider, but I see he or she wants to do the procedure at this facility. You know what, we'd really like you to go to this facility over here. It has a better quality score for this, that, or the other. And we'll cover that at 100%. At no time does price enter that equation, because honestly, nobody wants cheap healthcare, right? Nobody wants cheap, right? Most people value expensive with better. You don't get high quality when you've got somebody that does 20 knee replacements a year. You get high quality when they do 300. Maybe not when they do 1,000. You kind of have to balance that. But when you're doing 300 or 500 of something, you know what the complications are. You know what to look out for. You don't want to see the person that you have on your table again, so you tend to do a better job. And I think that's to put that into the hands of an individual person is really something remarkable.
See, what's unique and where we're starting to see it now is provider level quality data, not just facility. Because it's what you said, if you can get the surgeon that she does 300 knees a year as opposed to the surgeon in the same facility that does 4, that's a big difference. And to figure out and know why that happens, and then be able to look at that data on those 300 procedures, that's the goal right there.
It's key to not only containing costs, but getting care to actual people. I know the purpose of a high deductible health plan was to make people better consumers, but they don't know how to be.
Again, I come from outside healthcare, so this may sound naive, but what high deductible health plans have done have basically created uninsured members.
Yes.
Because most members can't afford, regardless of an HSA, they can't afford the deductible.
Correct.
And if you can't afford to pay your deductible, you're technically uninsured, but yet you're still paying premiums.
Well,
and a lot of premium.
Yeah, it creates catastrophic events that for future down the road, right? Because then people delay treatment. And as you delay treatment, you're just kicking the can further down, and then boom, you have a heart attack. Boom, you have a stroke, because you never went and got the preventative stuff done. Because you looked at it and said, I'm an hourly worker, I make $20 an hour, I can't afford, and so I don't even want to go into the doctor because I'm afraid of what the doctor's going to tell me.
I'm afraid of what it's going to cost. I'm afraid of what they're going to tell me. And then rather than dealing with my X at a minor level, it's a $40,000 emergency room. I have a client and they really have done a lot. They have options for coverage at 100% and low premium, manufacturing, very blue collar. They have 3 people over the last 4 years who have had some sort of metabolic syndrome issue. Then they spike and get really sick. They start losing body parts. They end up in the hospital and they die. And they cost a lot of money. And it's terrible for the human. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just atrocious. So by giving people tools, and I've also found that you can if you give people the tool, they'll use it. People want to be good consumers. You do have to explain it a few times, though.
It's confusing.
Yes.
Again, I'm the everyday healthcare user because I don't come from the industry. And, it's interesting. A couple of years ago, one of my clients used me as their test case of running ideas past me. And I got so confused, I stopped the conversation. I'm like, guys, I just went to the emergency room. And because it was confusing, if you can make it simple for the everyday American, the everyday healthcare plan user, the ideas work. And it's being able to say it easily, give them the tools necessary to be successful. You will have a better outcome in your health plan.
Let's talk about how you build a health plan around the app. Because I think you do have to build a health care plan around it to harvest it effectively.
You're looking at me. I'm going to defer to Thomas on this one, though. He's the genius behind that.
All right.
Well, one of the things, going back to what you just mentioned earlier, I can tell you another thing that we did from a plan design standpoint. We had a cabinet manufacturer, had 200 employees in Dallas, outside of Dallas. And we, doing their analytics, saw that their male population had a preventative visit of about 10% of the male population over the age of 40. Horrible.
Sounds about right.
Horrible, right? Mm-hmm. These guys are hourly blue-collar workers, right? And what it came down to was HR, their company handbook, didn't... They could take the time off, they go to the doctor, but they weren't getting paid. So they're not going to take the time off when they make $20 an hour. They're not going to take that hour or 2 hours
Correct.
off to go to the doctor to get a preventative checkup. So we created a system to where they would actually get paid their normally hourly rate, plus they would get a bonus. Because it wasn't about going to the doctor, because the doctor, again, for preventative is free, right? Mm-hmm. Covered 100%. But it was losing that income during that time period. So you got to create that. You got to create, it's not just about the plan, but it's also the whole HR culture and compensation package, I would say, for a company, to look at that from a holistic point of view of how are we incentivizing members to actually utilize the plan to be able to drive those costs, to be able to lower overall costs, right? So it's all about incentivizing, and different areas that you can incentivize from a catastrophic level, right? You got to have those measurements in place, but then also from a day-to-day use standpoint as well, because those are your nickels and dimes, right? And if you can save pennies on the nickels and dimes, and then you can save dollars on the thousands, then you're really driving home change.
What was the result for the cabinet company?
They went from 10% to 38%.
And I think a lot of people would look at that and go, "Oh my God, that's terrible." I think that's great.
That's great. Yeah, it's a 20% increase. That's a big thing.
Yeah, and so you're getting people seen. So you're catching high blood pressure early. You're catching high cholesterol early. You're catching elevated A1Cs early.
Correct.
And then you can make plans to address that.
Yeah, and the whole thing was like, look, your preventative visits are going to go up, so your $200 office visits are going to go up, right? Mm-hmm. Which is fine. I would rather you pay $200 more for office visits than have a $200,000 heart attack come up next year, right? Wouldn't you pay a little bit of preventative? That's what insurance is for, right?
I think the key to that though is sitting down with the employer and the stakeholders and walking through what employee procedures have to do with a health plan. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly lower income workers often get caught in that, well, I understand that the visit is free, except I have to take off 2 hours from work and I can't afford to take the 2 hours off from work.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it holistically like that, I really think you can change the dynamic of how a health plan works for people. And there's a lot of conversation, right, wrong, or otherwise about, this is part of the DEI conversation. It's part of the health equity conversation. And a lot of these things are really simple to fix. It's just that you have to have a conversation about it, and somebody has to ask.
Yeah, 100%. It's the social economics of it, right? And if you look at the people that a majority of the time have the metabolic issues, have those different type of health concerns, it is people that have lower social economic status. And so they're just not financially literate when it comes to that, right? I mean, I wasn't. And so it's about educating them and about learning that and understanding from a holistic point of view of working with the company of how do we take care of everyone, not just in a plan design, right? But outside of the plan design too, to be able to incentivize them to be able to get those things done to protect themselves.
Which requires the engagement of HR, and it requires the engagement of the C-suite leadership as well. And I've always been a big proponent of executive leaders doing what they're asking everybody else to do. And it works remarkably well.
It creates loyalty with employees
Absolutely.
too, right?
Yep.
If you can create loyalty with those employees, if you show those employees that you really care about them by doing those type of things, you understand their social economic status, you understand on how this impacts their family, you're going to create that loyalty, and that your loyalty is going to create long-term tenured employees, and then you don't have to worry about turnover, right? It's a whole, and that turnover now is very aggressive, right, from a retention of standpoint of employees. So,
yes, and I think one thing that is always surprising to people is that 90% of medical issues are not really medical issues. They're social determinant of health issues. So if you're addressing the social determinant of health issues, then you're cutting down on your large claims so you can cut the cost of healthcare because you're paying less.
exactly.
We always come back to Dutch.
Everybody always comes back to Dutch. So I think we're going to leave it there today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
And we will see you next time.